Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of Barebow Basics. In previous segments, we learned about applying the concept of repeatable consistency to the bow setup. And with bow in hand, you're no doubt eager to start sending arrows downrange. But before we do that, we want to learn how we can apply the concept of repeatable consistency to the shot process and shot execution. So to do that, today we're here at the Archery Zone in Larksville, Pennsylvania. This is a shop that I have spent countless hours learning, training, and coaching at. While we may reach out to online resources as Barebow archers for the wide range of options available to us, if you have a local shop like this one that caters to Barebow archers, it's always best to support that local shop. By supporting that range, it'll be around for years to come for you to come train, meet other archers, and learn from other archers. In order to promote repeatable consistency during the shot execution, we need to focus on the 2 points of contact that an archer interacts with the bow during the shot. The first will be the bow hand. And while we've talked about it briefly, the bow hand exerts grip pressure in a balanced manner on the grip face, somewhere along the center line of the grip. Balancing the grip pressure is the key. Any excess torquing, heeling, or high wristing will affect how the shot breaks and where the arrow goes. In order to promote a balanced pressure point, we need to look at two important concepts in how the bow hand embraces the grip face. The first thing we want to focus on is the placement of the grip inside the bow hand palm. This line is generally where the center line of the grip should be placed, with the central point of the grip pressure placed along that line in the palm right here. If we place the bow grip into the palm of the hand, we can see that there is space on the side of the palm here, allowing that center line of the grip to fall in this region of the palm. The other important thing is how the bow hand interacts with the bow grip. Unnecessary bow hand tension can cause issues during the shot. Once string tension is applied, the riser will be pressed into the palm along that center line. The fingers no longer need to interact with the riser in any way and should remain as relaxed as possible. Any type of clenching or tensed fingers that are extended or curled under create varying amounts of tension in the muscles in the palm. This can create a difficult situation to duplicate when under competitive stress. Instead, relax the bow hand fingers entirely once the string tension has been applied. The tension is enough to keep the riser in the palm, and the fingers can remain completely relaxed. I like to tell my students to think of their fingers as jelly fingers. This helps visualize how relaxed they really should be. Thus, it is imperative that we use a finger sling or a wrist sling of some sort. This helps ensure that the riser will have natural follow-through during the shot release and the bow will not fall to the ground. The other point of contact is the draw side hook on the bowstring. In Barebow, we shoot something called 3 fingers under, which is where we put 3 fingers together on the draw side hand and using a finger tab, hook the bowstring somewhere below the arrow nock. Typically, we always use what we call a stringwalking crawl. This varies the location of where we apply that hook on the bowstring. Let's take a look. Typically, I find beginners do best with their draw side hook engaging the bowstring with the string at the joint of the index finger, inside the first joint of the middle finger, and either at the joint or just inside the ring finger. In this way, when the draw side hook is applied, you get nice steady tension with a clean line down the draw side hand, through the draw side wrist, and into the forearm. This prevents too shallow of a draw side hook, which can cause lateral deflections or premature release. Where we apply the draw side hook is dependent upon our stringwalking crawl for our setup. A stringwalking crawl is a determined distance below the arrow nock, usually indicated by a stitch or mark on your finger tab. You place your thumb at the index mark and slide the tab and your hook down to match that predetermined distance below the arrow nock. This sets the trajectory of the arrow so that it impacts where you want it when the point of the arrow is placed on that spot. It's very easy to simplify and understand how to adjust your string walking crawl. Whichever direction you want the arrow to move vertically on the target, you slide your tab. So shots that are going too low that need to go higher would require the tab to be higher up on the string. And shots that are too high on the target would need to be lowered on the target by sliding the finger tab down on the string. There's another point of contact that's not related to how the archer interacts with the bow, but rather how the archer interacts with themselves. And that's the anchor point, or where we put the draw side hook on our face in order to create a repeatable sight picture. Now, due to variations in physiology or anatomy from archer to archer, the specific anchor point might be different. But the primary guidance I give to all my students is always to choose a fixed and immobile anchor point. Choosing something like the corner of your mouth or some arbitrary spot on your jaw or chin is never a good idea because the flesh can move or the jawline can shift. This is why approaches such as face walking generally don't produce great results. Instead, the best archers tend to use a spot along their upper tooth line because the distances to their dominant eye are fixed and will never change. For example, I use the gap in front of my canine tooth up against my gum line. This creates a very specific, tiny spot that is easily referenced and always the same distance to my dominant eye when I'm aiming. With practice, it'll become a subconscious action to draw directly to your anchor and lock in on that specific point. So let's put it all together and add in a few additional considerations that are important for beginners to know. We step to the shooting line and we generally straddle it. The stance that you choose is up to you. Whether it's an open stance, a closed stance, or a neutral stance, find what works best for you. Most beginners prefer a neutral stance as it's very natural. Again, a finger sling or a wrist sling is a critical piece of equipment. Do not try to learn how to shoot barebow without it. You need to promote a fully relaxed bow hand in order to prevent unintentional grip pressure balance changes. When you're on the shooting line, your neighbors will be very close to you. So it's important that we stay in our lane. Resist the temptation to try to knock an arrow with your bow sideways. Learn how to knock an arrow with the bow vertical. Typically, I teach my students to tuck the lower limb against the inside of their calf and against their thigh. This gives you a stable platform to set your arrow up. You can either grasp the arrow here and knock it this way and place it on the arrow rest, or you can control it by the knock and place it through and knock it on the string. Either approach works fine as long as the bow stays vertical. From there, we set our crawl as to whatever it needs to be. We set our grip pressure and relax our fingers as we apply tension to the bowstring. Then we make sure our posture is upright and our head is straight, looking downrange at the target. Bring both arms up in unison and draw to our anchor. You may be wondering as a beginner, how do I find my first crawl? It's actually a pretty straightforward process, but it does require the help of either a friend or a camera on a tripod. I generally start my students at 10 yards. This keeps the target bail nice and close so that your odds of missing a medium or large size bail are pretty much zero. You'll start by taking an arbitrary distance as your reference point for your crawl, either twice the length of your bottom knocking point or 3 times the length of your bottom knocking point. Crawl to that distance by running through the shot process. And when you're at anchor, place the tip just below the yellow. Your friend, or the camera, will be able to tell if the arrow is roughly pointed at the target. In this case, I know that the arrow is pointed a little bit too high. To make an adjustment, if the arrow is too high, you simply crawl further down. If the arrow is pointed below the target face, you want to crawl up. Repeat until you get to a point where the arrow is pointed roughly at the target. It's really that simple. So there you have it, the basics of shot process. If you combine this information with the knowledge you learned about form and alignment in a previous segment, you'll be able to train until the entire flow happens in a smooth and automatic subconscious process from when you step to the line to when you hit your anchor and you begin your active aiming. This will set the foundation for great shooting execution as your barebow journey continues. As always, thanks for watching, and I look forward to sharing more information with you in our next segment.